Greetings, fellow pilgrims. My name is Doug. This is Camino 2020. I am preparing for my Camino next year, and I'm trying to help out any of my fellow travelers and planners to get ready for their Camino by posting gear reviews, plans, training, and that sort of thing. Today, what I want to talk about is how to afford going on the Camino in the first place. Let me just begin by saying that I am not rich. I work for a church, strike one. I live in California, strike two. I have 4 kids with a mother who homeschools them, strike three. We are about as far from the dink lifestyle as you can get. So when I first started considering going on the Camino, price was one of the first things that popped into my head. Now, it is not that expensive being on the Camino, but I chose those words carefully. Being on the Camino is not that expensive, which is to say that your daily meals, your lodging, those sorts of things that would be very expensive if you were in California are really not that much when you are taking the Pilgrim's way. Albergues are fairly inexpensive. Restaurants have pilgrim meals specifically for those who are making that journey, and it's meant to be fairly affordable. But first, you've got to get to the Camino. Steve Martin has this old joke about saving $1 million on your taxes. First, get $1 million. So the Camino is kind of like that for us Americans or those outside of Europe. First, get to Spain. Now, this was one of my primary concerns because when I traveled through Europe a long time ago, it was about $1,000 just in travel expenses. However, back in January, when my cousin and I started really seriously starting to plan our Camino, we looked at airfare, and we discovered that had we wanted to go on Camino this year, we found tickets for $500 to Spain. I couldn't believe it. In America, $500 gets you coast to coast if you're lucky. So the first thing I want to say is that if you shop carefully for airfares, it is actually possible to fly to Europe for well under 4 digits. Beyond the flight, you've got 2 major expenses that you need to be ready for. Number one is just the amount of cash on hand you're going to need while you are on the Camino, and the second is getting your gear. Now, I love gear, if you couldn't tell from this channel, but let's get real for just a second. The Camino is a route that has been traveled for over 1,000 years. And realistically, the kind of gear that most people bring on the Camino today wasn't even available for about 98.8% of that time. All right, the old school pilgrims, they didn't have special clothes, they didn't have a special backpack, they weren't going ultralight. These guys put on whatever clothes they had, they walked out the door, they found a gourd to fill with water, they found a shell to beg for food in, and they just picked up a stick somewhere along the way to walk with. And with just those things, they managed to make it all the way to Santiago, regardless of bandits, Muslim invaders, a whole bunch of challenges that we modern pilgrims do not face. So just as a reality check, keep in mind that although having good gear is going to make your journey a lot more pleasant, this is a pilgrimage, not a vacation. If you don't have super high-tech, ultra-wicking, breathable, blah, 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 everything, you can still walk the Camino. I would say that chances are for the average American, if you just went through your closet, went through your garage, and put together a gear package, you could probably get 80 to 90% of the way there with the gear that you need, just with what you have lying around the house. Furthermore, if you don't, you could run down to a Walmart or a Goodwill and probably find yourself a decent backpack and some of the other things that you may not have lying around. Okay, so having said all that, would I recommend going on the Camino without any kind of specialized gear? No, not necessarily. If you have the funds, or you know people who have the funds, or you have some way of gaining some extra cash for the Camino, there are things that are going to make your journey a lot more doable. Now, look, if you have expendable cash, this is probably not the video for you. You can just stop watching right now. But if you are on something of a tight budget, here are some tips to help you out. My personal process begins on Amazon. Now, I know that's kind of a duh, but there are better and worse ways of using Amazon for your shopping. If all you've ever done is just gotten on Amazon, type something into the search bar and hit enter, that's fine, but you're not really utilizing Amazon for all that it can do. One of the most convenient features that Amazon offers is the wish list. And if you've never used this before, essentially what you do is you log into your Amazon account, and while you're shopping, instead of filling up the shopping cart, you fill up a wish list. And what it does is it creates sort of a registry, like a wedding registry of things that you want. And the nice thing about it is that you can narrow it down to the exact size, color, quantity. You can rank it according to priority, and you can share it out publicly or with friends. Now, to take the wish list to the next level, once you have things in your wish list, Amazon can alert you when the price drops. Another thing the wish list is good for is being sort of a registry. If you've got, say, a year to save up for your Camino, you're going to have at least one birthday, you're going to have at least one Christmas, Valentine's Day, Father's or Mother's Day. There are lots of opportunities that other people might have for wanting to get you a gift, and they don't necessarily know what you want. So the wish list is actually very handy for people that are trying to get a gift for you. One other thing that I would suggest on the wish list is to make multiple wish lists. If you just click add to list on an item, it's going to put it on your primary wish list. However, I suggest having some sub-lists. Your main list might contain books, it might contain food that you want, it might contain non-Camino things that you are interested in having, and that's all great. However, I strongly recommend having a Camino wish list that is going to be nothing but the things you want and need for your Camino. In addition, I suggest making a consideration list. So this is not a wish list of things you want, it's a list of things you might want. So for example, let's say I'm going through and I am looking for a camera that I want to take on the Camino. I might see 12, 13, 25 models that I'm considering, that I'm interested in. And I don't want to have to remember all of those, but I don't really want to put them on my wish list either, just in case some well-meaning person comes along and decides to be nice and buy me something. I don't want them buying me a camera when I haven't even decided that I really want that. And once I've made a decision, I move it to the appropriate wish list and I delete everything else. All right, so Amazon is kind of my starting point. That's where I keep my wish list. That's where I start for price comparison. Then you want to move on to some other places to see what kind of deals you can get. Now, I will put some links in the description to some of the discount sellers that I have seen. A lot of these online-only retailers will have a special where if you sign up for their newsletter, they'll give you 20% off your first purchase. That can be leveraged into a pretty seriously great purchase with some of the higher ticket items. The way a lot of these guys survive is by having better customer service, better return policies and that sort of thing than some of the big retailers. So they actually have some pretty impressive policies at times. But you do want to make sure that you know which one is which. But also, don't be a jerk. Okay, don't use these retailers as rental agencies, because if enough people start doing stuff like that, the legitimate shoppers are going to lose out. As far as the big retailers go, personally I'm a big fan of REI, and I know that's pretty basic, but since I've started shopping, I've actually found REI to be very good. The stores are fantastic. They have people there that can actually answer questions, help get you fitted for a backpack, find the right clothing, teach you how to take care of things. They have a great owner rewards program. For $20, you've got a lifetime membership full of discounts. They've got their garage sale program where they empty out all the stuff that's been returned over the year. Gear has to be tested before you really know if it's what is going to work for you or not. The only way you're really going to be sure is to use the gear. And so they have a no questions asked return policy for up to a year. Again, please don't abuse this program, but it's okay to use it legitimately. I've used it. I'll probably use it again. Sometimes you just need that extra usage to be sure about your purchase. Another great source for gear is just looking locally. Sites like eBay, Craigslist, Facebook communities. People are constantly buying camping gear and getting rid of it. Now, I wouldn't be buying underwear, socks. But when it comes to backpacks, trekking poles, the high dollar pieces of gear that are pretty easy to inspect and see if they're going to work or not, that kind of stuff you can get at very reasonable prices without working too terribly hard. Now, you may not get exactly the model that you want. You're probably not going to find the exact thing on your Amazon wish list, But you know what? You might get something better. My final piece of advice when it comes to shopping for your Camino is, as much as possible, be patient. It is far better to continue to save up money, keep an eye out for those really good deals and get them when you can, than to just start dumping your cash and filling up a big crate full of gear that you're not going to use for a year and end up breaking the bank, and now you've got nothing left to buy food. I would spend a lot more time filling up that Amazon wish list, get a good idea of how much those things cost. I personally actually made a spreadsheet where I tracked how much I thought everything was going to cost. And that way, when something changed, I can adjust it on the spreadsheet and see how my numbers have changed. The main idea is just to keep an eye on what you're doing, keep an eye on the totals, what you've spent, what you think you're going to spend, get it all out there in front of you so that there are no surprises when it comes Camino time. I hope this video has helped you out as you are planning for your Camino. If it has, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. Hit subscribe and then click the bell for future notifications. I'm Doug, this is Camino 2020. Buen Camino.